All right, let's start the show. Welcome everybody to our Blue Summit New Year's Financial Fitness webinar. So wonderful for everybody to join us. We have a pretty full house tonight, so we're really happy about that. We have a lot of clients and prospective clients on this webinar, so thank you guys for joining us. It's really wonderful to have you here. So we're going to be going over financial fitness for 2024, just some basic house rules for this Zoom webinar. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see a Q&A button. If you have any questions for us, please type them in there and we can try our very best to get to them at the end. And that's about the only house rule. We'll be going through all of these items here on this first slide. But just a quick introduction to Blue Summit, since some of you don't know who we are and what we do. We're a financial planning firm in La Mesa, California, and we help our clients align their investments with their values while also providing sound financial planning advice. So that's us in a nutshell. We'll also talk a little bit more on who we are at the end of the webinar. But for now, why don't we get started? So I'll introduce what we're going to be covering today, and then we'll proceed. So we're going to be going over some basics, know what you spend, assemble your financial team. Judy will be covering those. Then we'll move on to taxes, retirement plans, and cash management. Alan is going to be covering those. Financial planning, that'll be me. And then Judy will talk more about Blue Summit and how we help. And then we'll finish up with a few minutes of Q&A. So without further ado, why don't we get started, and I'll pass it over to Judy.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. Happy New Year's to all of you, people we know and people we don't. When we want to set you on the right path for 2024, one of the very first things that we like to cover, and I've done lots and lots of financial planning courses over the 30 years I've been doing this. And one of the very basics that probably many of you know, but it never hurts to me to be reminded, is to really know what it is that's going out the window, right? We can make lots of money, but if we spend it all, we're left with nothing. So it's super important that you know what you spend so that you can keep more of what you're earning. And some of my tips that I suggest in doing that are tracking. Number one, I did this when I was young. I learned how to do this and I taught it in all of my classes. Is, you know, when you're first starting to figure out what's going out the door, just track every little thing. Every, you know, dollar that you spend. I used to keep a little log by my bed every night and just write it all down. Now it's easier because pretty much we throw everything on the charge card. So you can, you know, take a look at that at the end of the month, total it up and see where money's going out that doesn't need to go. So using your year-end credit card summary, if you want to get a good handle on a budget going forward, taking those annual payments like insurance premiums, property taxes, and maybe averaging them out to monthly amounts. So that you can get a kind of a monthly expenditure list is really helpful. We do have some tools for these. If you want them, we're happy to email them out to you. Determining what is needs versus wants. So if you're trying to sock away money for retirement or for some large expenditures like bicycles or motorhomes or travel, or helping your kids with college or weddings, then you might want to know what you can cut out of the budget. Oftentimes we find for people that is eating out. Eating out is really expensive. Groceries are expensive today. Eating out is really expensive. So that's a big place we find people can cut if they need to, potentially, you know, going through that credit card bill and finding automatic monthly recurring payments that you aren't using, like subscriptions to, you know, Netflix, and maybe you're not using it anymore. Some people are really shocked when they go through that and they're like, oh, I'm not using that. I didn't know I was paying it. So, go and stop that. You can save a lot of money that way. The next tip is making sure you're paying yourself first. So putting money aside for savings, obviously, if you're employed and you have like a 401k, doing that pre-tax. If you're self-employed, having the right kind of retirement plan. Alan's going to talk more about those. And we call that paying yourself first. Paying yourself first does not mean going out to eat. Paying yourself first means putting money in savings for your longer term needs. So we always suggest minimum 10% paying yourself first. Obviously 20% would be better, but minimally, and this is something you can teach your grown kids. You're making, $500 a week, set aside $50, set aside at least 10%. And lastly, live within your means. Obviously, if you are not doing that, you are on an unsustainable track. So those are my best tips for knowing what you spend. And I hope that little reminder can help a few of you. And I think I've got one more slide. There we go. Second tip for this year for all of you is that we feel it's extremely important for you to assemble a good financial team. We are just a part of that for you. Obviously, you can see I've divided this up into 4 sections. We're over there on the top left, your investment advisor, and we serve a lot of different functions, and maybe some that people don't really even know that we can do. We help with your tax efficiency, tax efficient portfolios, year-end tax planning. We're all CFPs, all 3 of us that you see here. Alan's also a CPA. So we know a lot about tax planning. We can work in conjunction with your tax professionals. Portfolio management, obviously the bulk of what we do. Cash flow strategy, whether you're working, whether you're retired, helping you live off of what you have. Goals discovery, that's a big one we help with, and one that sometimes people are surprised about when they first meet with us, is that we want to know what your goals are, and that helps guide your whole financial plan. Sometimes people have a hard time identifying what their goals are, so we are very skilled at helping you figure that out, and we love those meetings. Those are super fun. Financial planning, doing lifetime projections, helping people retire when they want to, helping people reach their goals, estate strategy and coordination. And we can work hand in hand with your estate attorney. Risk management, we can help you with your life and your long-term care insurance. And we've been doing that for years. And then obviously following up every year to make sure you're on track. That's in essence, some of what we do. And along with us, you should have a good risk management team or person, for your home, your personal insurance, your auto insurance, your life insurance. You should have an estate planning firm that helps with your estate plan. Here in California, we're a probate state. So you want to make sure that you have a trust in addition to a will, so that, if anything were to happen to you, you don't have to go through probate. Probate is very expensive. It generally costs between 3 to 10% of your total estate. If you own a home and it's worth $1 million and you have a mortgage for $700,000, you only have $300,000 in equity. Guess what? That probate fee applies to that whole $1 million home. It's very expensive. If you have a trust, you don't go through probate. All sorts of things that your estate planning attorney will do for you. We can help align you with the right kind of services that you might need. And then finally, your financial team, you should have a great tax person, accountant, bookkeeper if you have a business, and we can help work hand in hand with them. Alan is also a certified valuation analyst for all of you business owners. So we all work together, and I'll pass to Alan.
Thanks, Judy. So I'm going to be covering what we started with under the umbrella of taxes. And, retirement plans are really core to Blue Summit. And if you really think about retirement plans, not only do they help you have a place to save your money and grow it, which is, really what Blue Summit helps do, but why do we have retirement plans? It's because, the government wants to encourage people to save for themselves rather than having to worry about funding everyone at the end of their lives through social safety nets. Therefore, there are incentives to retirement plans. I think we take these for granted, but really what we're doing is we're paying less tax either in the year that you contribute or in the future years. So we're all familiar with kind of the main IRAs and Roth IRAs. Excuse me. One thing I wanted to point out about 401ks too. So if you're still working and contributing to a 401k or a Roth 401k, Blue Summit can help manage those too. So we now have a program where we can reach into your firm's 401k that is at your job and help you with that. So if you know someone that's still at work, or this might pertain to you, and they just really have a 401k and they need some advice, well, that might be something Blue Summit can help with now. The other big part of retirement plans are for self-employed individuals, and I know we have some of those as clients and some of those on the webinar right now. So if we don't have a plan already in place with you for something that looks like a SEP, simple, solo 401k, or a DBO, which is typically referred to as a pension, we should be talking about that, and we probably have. But if you're thinking, hey, I might start a business on the side and maybe I'm going to make $5,000 or $10,000 and I don't really need that cash, well, these are also tools to take that money, put into a retirement plan, maybe not pay any tax now, and pay taxes in the future when you're making less money and you're in a smaller tax bracket. As I was thinking about explaining this, tax brackets came to mind. And a very common question that we get is, I don't want to go into a higher tax bracket because then I'm going to pay a lot more in tax. So to just visually describe that here, I had this on the right. It's important to know that in this theoretical, marginal tax on the right of say $32,000, the first $11,000 you get, let's say that's taxed at 10%. If you go to $11,001, only that extra dollar gets taxed at the next bracket. So many people know this, but it sometimes is discouraging people to make more money. Oh, I don't want to go into another tax bracket, or oh, I don't want to maybe do a Roth conversion, something that I want to talk to Blue Summit about because I'll go into another tax bracket. But what we try to do is look at your average tax and then also this marginal next dollar tax, which is what marginal means. And as Judy mentioned, we work hand in hand with CPAs. We don't do tax returns, but we do kind of give this level of advice for people like you, for people like our clients, excuse me. And then also just updating as 2024 is here, what do federal tax brackets look like? This doesn't even include state. So if we're getting into a couple 100,000 of income, whether that's through work or Social Security plus taking out of the IRA, we're quickly approaching a third of your money going into taxes, and not even including, when you go out and buy with sales tax. So part of our job with your investments is also to help minimize taxes, working hand in hand with CPAs, but think about us as taking a role there too. And if you have questions, run it by us, especially if you don't have a CPA. Maybe we can help for free. A little bit more on taxes, just because a lot of people are now starting to do a standard deduction versus historically they may have itemized. The standard deductions have come up quite a bit over the last few years, and that's supposed to simplify this process. But what ends up happening perhaps is some people, they don't have deductions that they used to have. So keep in mind, we're talking about incentives again. Government wants to incentivize owning a home for middle class, that mortgage interest is deductible, but now it's capped at actually $750,000. So, you know, things like charitable contributions, those might not be deductible for you anymore if you're taking the standard deduction. And so maybe we should talk about doing qualified charitable deductions. I know some of you on this call are doing those, because that is a way to deduct your donations, because they're no longer able to be itemized. And, you know, medical expenses, 401k contributions, HSA accounts. If you have quite a bit of years saving up HSA, we can set up an investment HSA for you when that money gets built up to a certain amount, and you can invest that. There's tax benefits there. This whole webinar is really meant to give you some ideas to talk to us one-on-one about. So I'm not going into exact detail on all of these, but if something like this sounds like, hey, that might apply to me, let's follow up. But the main thing on taxes, I guess I would summarize, would be to say, we're trying to move money into years where your tax bracket is going to be lower. Some good news, especially for people that are Blue Summit clients. We have the Inflation Reduction Act now, which is encouraging people, again, encouraging to spend money on green technology, renewables, electric vehicles, and also building in America. So this new tax credit that I've highlighted here on the right for cars, actually it's EV cars that are made in America. So kind of you know, trying to get a double benefit for the economy there. But look at the left here. If you see anything that you might be interested in purchasing or have purchased, keep in mind that there might be some tax credits for you. And if you have any questions about this, we've already helped a couple clients either work with their CPAs. This is brand new. The Inflation Reduction Act is pretty new. So most CPAs are on top of this, but you might want to even bring this up if you have purchased one of these, or if you're thinking about buying a car. Let me point out one new thing. Starting this last couple of weeks, I guess on January 1st, the dealerships are now able to take this $7,500 right off the top at point of sale. So you don't have to wait until the next year to get your $7,500 back. It actually acts as a purchase price reduction. And because some of these companies are taking the $7,500 off, the ones that can't are actually matching it. So for example, Hyundai isn't made in America, but their electric vehicles have been priced lower to help match these. And this website I have here, rewiringamerica.org, we sent this out to our clients, but just a reminder, all of this information is in there, and you might want to look up exactly your situation. So pivoting slightly out of taxes and retirement plans, but something that I also wanted to cover, it's relatively new to Blue Summit. We've really been focusing on optimizing cash management for our clients over the last, say, year and a half. It's been a lot more important, right? When interest rates were 0 at the Fed level and 0.1 at your bank, it didn't totally matter if you had your account in 0.1 or 0.2. But now when accounts are 3, 4, 5%, you don't want to be in a 0.1. And most checking accounts and some of the savings accounts at big banks are still at 0.1. And they do that because they make a lot of money off of your cash. They reinvested in treasury bills, et cetera, that are making 5%. So we want to get you the 5%. And we have a partner. It's a program called IFI Network. If you're interested in this, just send me a quick note and I'll send you our specific link. But what it does is they're a fintech program that partners with banks across the country. So for example, right now, their main bank is Citibank. They also have a relationship with Northwestern Bank. So your money is FDIC insured. That's the main thing. When we're talking cash, we want no risk, right? So I'm not saying that these are even money market funds or, you know, trying to do any sort of investing, which is for the rest of your money. This cash is government secured. We just have to pick the right bank to put it in. And this program helps slot that money into what bank is offering the best rate at that time. And they might move around. So if CD drops a little lower, they'll find something else. We'll get into maybe a 2024 outlook later on, but I think this will become important as we talk about interest rates and how they may stay around this 3 or 4 or 5% for a while. Cash is going to be important. It's now going to be an asset that actually helps you grow your money. So definitely talk to us if you're, sitting with a lot of it in a checking account. That's it for me for now, and maybe I'll see you in the Q&A.
All right, well, let's switch gears to financial planning. So this is a term that's tossed around so much that everyone probably has a different definition, but I'd like to start with what it means for me and for our firm. So this is really what we've talked about so far in the webinar has been a lot of quantitative stuff. Financial planning to me and to our firm really blends the quantitative and the qualitative. So starting out with what's most important to you. Judy touched on this in the beginning with goals planning. Every single person has different things that matter to them, how they want to spend the hours in their day, the weeks in their year. For some, it could be hiking outside, spending time in nature. Family is important to everybody. Other people want to do all of that and also garden and just hang out with their dog. So obviously everyone's got their own answer, and we really like to respect that and honor that, and then tie those goals and aspirations into what is possible for that client financially. So it's really a good blend of two worlds, and we've seen personally, it's my favorite work to do with clients because we really get to see things happen in their lives that might not otherwise have happened that are very meaningful. So we usually start this process out with 3 questions, or people usually have 3 main questions when they start this process, and it's, when can you retire with the assets you have now and will accumulate over your lifetime? What kind of lifestyle can you have? And how long will that money last? So those are the 3 core questions. If you feel that you're asking yourself any one of those or any combination of those, we should have a conversation and we can help you out. What do we incorporate into this process? I think that's good to get a baseline understanding. So we look at your current cash flow, so current employment, if you're employed, or if you have rental properties, future income sources like Social Security, pensions, again, rental properties, if those come into play, future cash sums that could be from inheritance, from selling a property, could be from anywhere. So we factor those things into the whole process. And of course, what you have now, what is your investment portfolio, how much you have in cash. That's all the kind of money in side. On the money outside, we look obviously at your monthly expenses. That's the single biggest figure for anybody. We look at mortgages, although those are different because those are terminal. At a certain point, those will end. So that's something we find clients may not think about, is they know they have a mortgage now and they sort of expect that will just keep going for forever and ever because that's what they're used to. But in 5 years, that'll end and their situation will change a lot once that happens. We can also factor in periodic goals, for instance, like funding a wedding for your child, or travel, a big destination trip, new cars every 5 or 8 or 10 years, large donations. So anything that you would spend money on any, whether it's a monthly or annual item or less frequent than that, we can bake those in. The whole goal is to match your plan with what's important to you so that you can see what's possible with your life. So we go next slide. So this is really the fun part for me, is to see the transition and the impacts with the financial planning process. So I use these images. For those who know me, I'm very much a water guy, so I use these analogies a lot. But I'll start with the top left image. We find that a lot of clients are living their lives, focusing on family and building their assets, developing their careers, and in a sense, they're just bashing through the waves and just getting ahead, sailing along. What we find when we start this financial planning process is that we're starting to zoom out and go stand on top of the mast or go even further up and look at a higher level to see, okay, now instead of just bashing through the waves, where is this boat going? And let's start to think about where we want to end up on this long journey across the ocean. So we really like to provide that shift in perspective. And what we really hope is it will help you make decisions that you otherwise wouldn't. I think the most common one that we help with is when to retire. Most people are working, and if they're in their mid 40s, let's say, or early 50s, possibly they're maybe have thought about retirement, but are so have their head down and working that they really just don't know when that can happen. So we start to work with them, and as they maybe get into their later 50s or early 60s, we can start to narrow in on, okay, this is a reasonable time to retire where you can live a good quality life like you have now, but still have enough insulation and space between the guardrails where you'll have some room for error. So just helping someone pin down a rough date for retirement versus not having anything in mind is huge. Just to put that pin on the map and say, here's where we're going towards, and there's a path to it that is sound. That's a decision that people can make that they might not otherwise make, and that's huge. The second big impact that we see as a theme is helping contextualize the difference between two paths. And I use these walking on a tightrope pictures. I think they're very, very apt, because if you were walking on a tightrope and you had your eyes closed, and I think one of the first things you'd want to know is, am I 1,000 feet off the ground or am I 6 inches? And it's a vastly different world depending on that answer. So we really hope, in a real world situation, how this plays out is we find some people laboring over a decision to take Social Security at 67 or 68. And for them, it may feel like they're 10,000 feet off the ground on that decision, but with some context and with some financial planning, we can put that into perspective and say, hey, look, it's not as big of a difference as you think, and let's show you the numbers. Let's back that up with solid software and show you that it's not as consequential as you might think. Whereas on the other end, we could show, let's say someone's in a high-paying job and they're making $250,000 a year, and they're thinking about quitting now or working 1 or 2 more years. Well, those 1 or 2 more years is a huge value to their life, and that 250 or 500,000 that they could earn could enable a lot of different options and choices in the future. So that's kind of the other end of the spectrum. The link there is just context is so important. So that's it for that slide. We'll go to the next one. So I'll wrap up my piece on financial planning with some real world examples. I think this is the best way to show with some stories how this plays out in the real world. So we had a client a number of years ago who lived in San Diego. Her son lived in Los Angeles, and he just had his first kid. So she wanted to be closer to him and her grandchild, but she didn't know if it was possible. She felt that it was too challenging financially to sell her house, and could she afford to live in northern LA? She wasn't sure. So we started gathering all the information that I talked about on the first slide, put together a financial plan, and helped to show her that, yes, this is possible. And now she's been living there for the last 7 or 8 years, and her life is just drastically different to be that close to her son and her grandchild. Her son now had another kid. So you can just see how these decisions compound to really add a lot of richness to people's lives. Next example, another San Diego client. She was a solo entrepreneur and had started an analysis firm. and very, very busy, obviously, as a business owner, and was challenging for her to, zoom out and get that higher perspective, and see, okay, where is this going? How much could I sell this business for? How can we, change our lifestyle to transition towards retirement? So I think in their case, just devoting time to these conversations and, having us be a partner and having the tools and know how to facilitate these conversations was very helpful for them. And it was really meaningful. One day I was taking a walk with her husband, and he told me that the work that we were doing for them helped make this decision possible, and that it was just such a relief for him to see this and see the transition his wife was making. So, that's what really comes first, full circle for everybody. The last one, another fun one, another San Diego client, working in real estate, but the husband's passion was race car driving. So he found a job teaching racing, and it just came up out of the blue. It was not something that anyone was expecting, but he started working this job and was finding he could make about half the income that he was making with real estate, but he loved it so much more. And he felt that he could do this for so much longer because his heart was in it. And it really shifted how much pressure he had to put on the real estate, and he could pull off of that. And, just knowing that he is inspired and excited to work the racing job for another 10 years versus, slogging through another year or two at real estate, really shifted things and opened up a lot of doors and added a lot of security to their retirement decision. So again, just moving from, being on deck and having that perspective to zooming out, looking where your boat is going, and then, having this journey across the ocean. And I'll end with this one. If you're sailing from California to across the Pacific, if you just change your rudder 1 or 2 degrees, that's the difference between ending in Russia or Japan or the Philippines. So these small changes early on can make a huge difference where you end up, and getting clear on where you want to end up catalyzes everything. So I'll wrap up with that one, and at this point we'll slide over to Judy, and she can expand a bit more on some more topics.
Thank you. That was really great. I have so much to say about that, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to. How about that? I can actually show restraint. I know that's hard to believe. I want to talk just for a minute, real quick, because I know I'm the only thing standing in between all of you enjoying this webinar and Alan, who's going to give us the market outlook and all the hot stock tips that you all need. Right? That was a joke. But Roth IRAs, I just want to say one thing here, because if you're our client, you already know, if you can do a Roth IRA, you're doing a Roth IRA. But there's this thing called a Roth 401k. Many of you who have 401ks with your employers have access to these. But you may not know the difference between a Roth IRA and a Roth 401k. And just before I go through those differences real quick, a Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA means that you are doing a post-tax contribution versus a traditional IRA, which is pre-tax. Traditional 401k is pre-tax. Roth 401k is after tax. So the Roth 401k and the Roth IRA are both after-tax contributions. But there are some other differences. A lot of people don't know. If you have access to a Roth 401k through your employer, and you can put money in there, your limit is as much as you can do with your 401k limit, which this year I think it's like 23,000. Last year it was like 22 and a half, depends on your age. Whereas with a Roth IRA, you can only do the $8,000. Also, you can't even do a Roth IRA if your income is too high, and too high is, over, I think it's about 146,000 for individual. If you're married, filing joint is 230,000. So if your income's too high, you can't even do a Roth IRA. But with a Roth 401k, you don't have to worry about an income limit. There are no income limits. So these are things that are great. Not all 401k have a Roth option. If you do have that, we can help guide you on whether or not you should be using the traditional 401k deduction or contribution, or the Roth 401k, or some combination of both. But you do need to have it through your employer. So I'm gonna pass to Alan for the market outlook, because I know all of you are dying for that. And I just want to know if you all noticed that I'm wearing the same shirt today as I have on my static picture that we did 5 years ago. I was younger then, but Alan, it's all yours.
I noticed. Great shirt. We also have this summary. Judy, maybe you want to touch on this after I do the market update, but we asked for questions ahead of time as part of the RSVP process, and overwhelmingly people wanted to hear about a 2024 outlook. So maybe that's really good feedback for us as well, that we could have a separate conversation about that maybe a couple times a year, and just what are we seeing coming down the road, and where were we in 2023? Because this kind of all started, the change in the stock market has really been driven lately from the interest rates I touched on earlier. We went through a phase a few years ago where the government was telling us that inflation was transitory, and it turned out that that wasn't totally accurate. So what we had to do in response was ramp up interest rates faster than we've ever done, in order to try to cool off the economy that was flush with cash, and supply was limited because we were coming right out of COVID. So I kind of started with the most important piece, the interest rates of what's been going on over the past couple years, because I think we've seen that start to change over the last couple weeks, maybe even a month and a half or so. As soon as the Fed said, okay, we're going to stop raising rates, well, they started showing us they were going to stop raising rates. The market in the Treasury, in the 10-year, and everything that the Fed doesn't control directly reacted, and it said, okay, rates are not going to go as high. They've started to show us that. That has implications for, obviously, the investments that we have for you, which include stocks and real estate. Interestingly, inflation isn't disappearing, right? So the pace of change has slowed, but it hasn't gone below zero. So when you go to the grocery store, prices aren't going down, they're going up slower. And so that moderate amount of inflation is actually quite good for stocks. If you think about, prices going up and then the revenue of companies nominally going up. Real estate is an inflation hedge because there's only a finite amount of it. If our base case is that rates stay flat, then, or go down, which is actually, the common base case is that they'll go down slightly. That should be a tailwind for both stocks and bonds and real estate this year. The other piece I have here on the right is relative to, Blue Summit investing. You may have heard about the Magnificent Seven, NVIDIA, Google, Tesla, et cetera. The tech companies have really dominated the performance of the S&P index, but we have exposure to small cap, mid cap, smaller companies. That's all that means, and international. So things that have done really well in the past, we're overweight on the other things, you can say, going forward. I don't think the, 7 companies from the United States dominating the entire market is sustainable. So that's another theme that we're seeing coming over the next, say, 12 months. And I do want to point out too that this is base case. So our job is to constantly reevaluate this literally daily with new information. Inflation numbers came out this morning. If you think about where we are January of 24, right? If January of 22, we didn't have a Russia-Ukraine war. In January of 2020, we didn't even know what COVID was. So things are going to come up over the year that, we can't predict. But if we have, the right base case and, like I said, these interest rates really drive a lot of things. And if we can plan for that and then pivot when we have new information, I think that's really important. And that's what we're doing for you pretty much, like I said, on a daily basis. And then I have one more slide on, the breakout, but basically it's to say that, these US stocks have done really well over the last 2 years. Where are the European stocks? Where are the smaller companies? Where are the mid-cap companies? Those started to really rally in December. And I think, over the next, say, year plus, their time is due. I think we have 2 other theme questions for the other members of our team.
Yeah, the next question that was very common when people were registering was how to maximize investment performance. So we'd like to address that, and Judy, you can take that one.
Excellent. So of course it's not trying to pick the hot stock because, we know that that's too risky to put all your money in one stock. So we really focus on balancing our clients' portfolios. And you can see up on the screen that we're showing, 6 different model portfolios from conservative to more aggressive with capital preservation, having more in fixed income, which is that red portion, and that fixed income portion going down as we get to the diversified equity, which is mostly all stock. However, even though that portfolio is mostly all stock, we're going to be very diversified in the stocks that are in there. Ideally, you're going to have hundreds of stocks, if not thousands. And those divided up between, large cap, small and mid and international to make a balanced portfolio, so that your volatility is in line with your performance. So obviously we're hoping and expecting, and over time we've found, and the market has found, that your more aggressive portfolios perform more, but they are going to have higher volatility. Whereas with some in fixed income, you're going to lessen your volatility. You can do that by keeping some in cash. But again, you want to keep your cash earning. So let's say, for example, somebody has $1 million portfolio, and they give us half of it, and we put it in a balanced portfolio, and it earns 6 to 8% per year. But they had the other half in cash, maybe these last 10 years hardly earning anything. And if the rest was earning nothing and we were doing 6 to 8, let's call it 7, they only averaged 3.5. So your allocation is the most important thing. If they would have invested that cash, then their whole portfolio would have earned 7%. They would have doubled their return. Knowing when you need cash, how much to set aside, and not having too much in cash. So that would be, number one, setting aside funds for your goals, your short term, investing appropriately for your longer term goals, diversifying the portfolio. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. We hopefully rarely see people invest in things that they shouldn't, because obviously they come to us and they have us to bounce any ideas off of. But we obviously do know people that have done that outside of our purview. and gotten themselves into a lot of trouble. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Yeah, if either of you want to add something.
No, I think that's a good summary. We're going to wrap up with this final question. This is one that we saw a few times from the registration, and it was, what are the environmental impacts of the Inflation Reduction Act and the U.S. climate goals? Are they actually making a difference? So in short answer, absolutely. Since the IRA passed in 2022, more than 270 billion in U.S. has been put into U.S. clean energy-based projects. Think wind, solar, battery storage, modernizing the grid. So it's just been a huge tailwind for getting these green projects going. Been very effective. The EV technology area, just electric cars in general, more than 130 billion has been invested. And over the next decade, trillions are expected to flow into these same areas. So there's no doubt that this has spurred a lot of growth into that area, which we feel well positioned for, with our investments being more green and have more weighted in these areas. We hope to benefit from that. We also have some alternative investments that are not stock, not bond, that have some unique exposure to clean energy too. So if that's something that interests you, that you can't get in a retail brokerage or another firm, that's something that we have a deep specialty in. And just the very last comment here is a number of clients just wanted a recap on how their investments with Blue Summit creates impact and aligns with their values. And I have 3 simple bullets on that. And the funds that we use, they first of all exclude the most offensive stocks, like almost all fossil fuel related companies are excluded. Tobacco, alcohol, quote unquote sin stocks, those are first of all just excluded. They don't come in at all. The second part is the fund companies we use integrate environmental and social criteria along with financial data, and they mesh those together to find the best performers in both of those areas. So that's called ESG integration. And the second part is shareholder advocacy, which is where the fund companies, being shareholders of these various companies, can have access to the boardrooms, to shareholder meetings, and to upper management to help drive corporate responsibility and spur environmental and social progress. So that is a huge way that your investments help to work towards the things that you value. So we send blog posts on that and articles out regularly, and we like to keep you guys informed. If you ever have more questions or want to dive a bit deeper into that topic, I am the point person at Blue Summit for that, and I love to talk about those things. So with that, we've gone a little over, so thank you guys for sticking with us. We appreciate your attendance. It's been wonderful to have you, and we hope that everyone got something out of this webinar. Have a wonderful evening.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Yeah. Have a great night. Let us know if there's anything we can do to help.
Hi.
Bye.